most worlds, and they are once again your North American champion.
EDG, the most dominant team the region has ever created.
And your new champions of the LCK is Longzhu Gaming.
Fnatic back on the world stage.
Hello and welcome to the 2017 World's Draw Show. We're coming to you live from Riot Studios in Santa Monica to find out who will take on whom at this year's World Championship. I'm James Dash Patterson, joined by Rivington Bislin III, and today we're going to kick things off for Worlds 2017.
That's right. In 11 days, 24 of the best teams from across the globe will converge on China to compete for the Summoners Cup. A year of hard work has seen them rise to the top of their own regions, and now they'll have a chance to face the best that the rest of the world has to offer.
That's exactly right. As always, we want you at home to be a part of the show, so if you're jumping on Twitter to talk about the draw with your fellow fans, then remember to use that hashtag Worlds 2017.
Now, there are a few changes to the Worlds format this year, including the addition of the play-in. So we've got a quick video to run through some of those changes.
In 2017, the League of Legends World Championship is coming to China, and we're here to lead you through some of the details of the competition. For the first time, 24 teams will compete in up to 3 stages of Worlds. These are the play-in stage, the group stage, and the knockout stage. Let's start with the play-in, which is taking place in Wuhan. 12 teams will compete in this stage of the tournament. These are the top seeds from Brazil, the Commonwealth of Independent States, Japan, LATAM North, LATAM South, Oceania, and Turkey. It will also include the second seed from Southeast Asia and third seeds from China, Europe, North America, and the LMS. Teams will be divided between 4 groups, with 3 teams in each group. They'll play a best-of-1 double round robin with the top 2 teams from each group advancing to round 2 of the play-in stage. There, the first and second seeds will be randomly paired together and will compete in a best-of-5, with the 4 winners moving on to the group stage. Also held in Wuhan, the group stage will introduce 12 new teams. The 3 seeds from Korea, the top 2 seeds from China, Europe, North America, the LMS, and finally the top seed from Southeast Asia, who earned this spot after their performance at the Mid-Season Invitational. These 16 teams will be split into 4 groups and compete in a best-of-1 double round robin. The top 2 teams from each group will advance to the knockout stage, with the format switching to best-of-5.
Now today, the draw show will be broken into 3 segments. First up is the play-in draw. After a short break, we'll return for the group stage draw. And finally, we'll wrap things up with a discussion from our analysts on how the cards fell.
And for now, let's kick things off with the play-in draw. 12 teams are competing in this part of the competition and have been divided into 3 pools based on their competitive strength.
Now, these pools are represented by the bowls we have on stage. In each bowl are capsules with team logos printed on them. There are 4 teams per pool being drawn into 4 groups, meaning there can be no invalid draw at any point in this process.
And as always, we have some very special guests joining us today to help with that draw. From China's LPL, our first guest is Invictus Gaming's mid laner, Rookie.
Also joining us today is Team IMA top laner, Amazing J. And without further ado, Amazing J, could you please take your place by the bowls for the play-in draw? The teams we have in Pool 1 are Team WE from China, Fnatic from Europe, Hong Kong Attitude from the LMS, and Cloud9 from North America.
So now that we are ready, and I believe Amazing J is ready, if you could draw the first team from Pool 1, Amazing J.
Heading into Group A, our first team, Team WE from the LPL.
Team WE are one of the oldest teams in professional League of Legends and have recently undergone a resurgence in the LPL. They were crowned LPL Spring Champions and earned China a Pool 1 berth back at the Mid-Season Invitational. They qualified for Worlds as China's 3rd seed through the Regional Gauntlet with a 3-2 victory over Invictus Gaming. This is their 2nd World Championship appearance.
Moving right along, Amazing J, please select our second team.
The next team drawing is going to be Cloud9 of the North American LCS, slotting into Group B.
With their win over Counterlogic Gaming in the NALCS regional qualifier, Cloud9 will once again represent North America at Worlds as the #3 seed from the region. Since they burst onto the scene in spectacular fashion, they've represented NA at Worlds every year and were the only North American team to make it out of the group stage at Worlds 2016. This is their 5th World Championship appearance.
Amazing Jay, if you could draw the third team from Pool 1.
And it looks like Fnatic of the European LCS will be slotting into Group C.
Fnatic make their return to the World Championship stage after a comprehensive 3-0 victory over H2K in the European Regional Qualifier to take Europe's #3 seed. They are one of the only teams in the competition to have won a World Championship and have made it to the semifinals or higher at Worlds on 3 separate occasions. This is their 5th World Championship appearance.
One more team to go in Pool 1. Amazing Jay, please do the honors.
It's going to be Hong Kong Attitude, locking in Group D.
Hong Kong Attitude is the #3 seed representing the LMS at Worlds 2017. After a mediocre run in the summer split regular season, they found inspired form in the regional qualifier and fought their way to become the first ever #3 seed to represent the LMS. This is their first World Championship appearance.
Now that concludes Pool 1. We're going to move on to Pool 2. The teams that are in Pool 2 are 1907 Fenerbahce from Turkey, Team 1 Esports from Brazil, Gambit from the CIS, and Young Generation from Southeast Asia.
All right, Rookie, you are up. Please step on up to Pool 2 to begin the draw and slot our next set of teams into their groups. Feel free to draw.
Our first team out of Pool 2 is Gambit Gaming, and they will be joining Team WE in Group A.
Gambit qualified for Worlds after a hard-fought 3-2 victory over M19 to become champions of the Commonwealth of Independent States. After a poor performance in spring, they rebuilt their roster around veteran jungler Diamondprox and dominated the regular season. With a combination of former Gambit and Albus Nox Luna players, they have a wealth of Worlds experience under their belt.
On to our second team out of Pool 2. Rookie, please do the honors.
Second team is Team 1, slotting in to Group B.
Team 1 Esports qualified for Worlds after a 3-1 victory over former Worlds attendee Pain Gaming to win the CBLOL Championship. In a fairy tale run for the incredibly young squad, they went from the Challenger Series to Worlds in a matter of 4 months. What they lack in experience, they make up for in passion, and will bring their unique style of play to the world stage in their first ever World Championship appearance.
All right, Rookie, please draw the third team when you're ready.
The third team out of Pool 2 is Young Generation, slotting in with Fnatic in Group C.
Young Generation placed second in both the Vietnam Championship Series spring and summer splits, giving them the opportunity to compete at the GPL. There, they played through the losers bracket and went on to win their spot at the World Championship. Thanks to the Gigabyte Marines' success at the Midseason Invitational, Young Generation will be the first ever #2 seed to represent the GPL at Worlds.
One team left in Pool 2. Rookie, show me who you got.
And the final group slotting in our team with Hong Kong Attitude is 1907 Fenerbahce in Group D.
1907 Fenerbahce qualified for Worlds in their debut season after a 3-0 victory against Turkey's regional powerhouse BAU Supermassive. While their season started slow, losing in the semifinals of the Winter Split, they came back strong, going undefeated at Rift Rivals and closing out the Summer Split with their finals victory. This is their first ever World Championship appearance.
That concludes Pool 2, so now it's time to move on to the third and final pool of the play-in group draw. Just a reminder that in this pool we have Lion Gaming from LATAM North, Direwolves from Oceania, Rampage from Japan, and Chaos Latin Gamers from LATAM South.
All right, Amazing Jay, please head back up to the drawing station and start Pool 3 for us when you are ready.
And our first team out of Pool 3 is Lion Gaming. They'll be joining the likes of Group A.
Lion Gaming qualified for Worlds as the representative for Latin America North, after once again being crowned champions of the Liga Latino America Norte. With 9 back-to-back titles, they are the most domestically dominant team in professional League of Legends and have clean swept every finals they have ever played in. This is their first World Championship appearance.
3 teams left to go. Amazing Jay, show me who you got next.
Slotting into Group B is going to be the Direwolves.
Direwolves qualified for Worlds as the representative for the Oceanic Pro League after beating former regional powerhouse Chiefs Esports Club 3-1 in the OPL Finals. This is their second consecutive OPL championship, and they'll be looking to improve on their performance from the mid-season Invitational. This is their first World Championship appearance.
All right, Amazing Jay, 2 teams left. Please draw one of those 2.
And filling out Group C will be the Chaos Latin Gamers.
Chaos Latin Gamers qualified for Worlds as the representative from Latin America South after their 3-1 victory over Azures Gaming in the CLS Finals. They're a team that has faced relegation and won championships twice in the past 2 years. While they've played in multiple former IWC events, this is their first World Championship appearance.
And we have arrived at our final team here in the play-in. Amazing Jay, please show me who you got.
And it is going to be Rampage, filling out Group D.
Rampage beat rivals Detonation Focus Me in the LJL Finals in a hard-fought 5-game series to become champions and to represent Japan on the world stage once again. They were Rift Rivals champions along with the rest of the LJL, beating the GPL and Oceanic Pro League, and will look to continue this international success at the World's Play-In. This is their first World Championship appearance.
There you have it. That brings us to the conclusion of the play-in draw. Just to recap, in Group A, we have Team WE, Gambit, and Lion Gaming. In Group B, it's going to be Cloud9, Team 1 Esports, and the Direwolves.
That's right. In Group C, it's Fnatic, Young Generation, and Chaos Latin Gamers. Finally, in Group D, it's Hong Kong Attitude, 1907 Fenerbahce, and Rampage.
Now that the play-in draw is wrapped up, we're going to take a short break to reset the stage. When we come back, though, we'll be hitting up that group stage draw of Worlds 2017. See you on the other side.
As tempting as chocolate, as indulgent as gold, or as subtle as black. Spray on attraction. unique Axe fragrances for every kind of man. Axe. As tempting as chocolate, as indulgent as gold, or as subtle as black. Spray on attraction.
Welcome back to the 2017 World's Draw Show. For those of you who missed it, the play-in teams have been drawn, and now we're moving on to the group stage draw.
That's right, I'm excited. Now, just a quick rundown of the draw. Teams have been separated into two pools. Pool 1 contains the teams from regions that earned a Pool 1 berth at the midseason Invitational. Pool 2 contains the remainder of the teams in the group stage, and Pool 3 will be made up of the teams that emerge victorious from the play-in, which will be drawn at the conclusion of that stage of the tournament.
Now, that's a lot of info, and when a team is drawn, they must be placed into the next available group so long as it does not create an invalid draw now or at any point in the future by preventing another seed from being placed in a valid position. For a deeper look into these rules, you can head over to lolesports.com where you can find a group draw guide that outlines all the details.
Absolutely. Lots of specifics. But now your top seeds for the World's 2017 groups are Longzhu Gaming from Korea, EDG from China, G2 Esports from Europe, and Flash Wolves from the LMS.
All right, I'd like to welcome our guest, Amazing Jay, back to the stage as we prepare to kick off the group stage draw.
All right, Amazing Jay, once again, could you please begin to draw the teams and slot them in the groups?
And our first team out of Pool 1 is EDG of the LPL, slotting into Group A.
Edward Gaming are one of the most decorated teams in China and were crowned LPL champions for a fourth time after reverse sweeping RNG to take the region's #1 seed going into Worlds. They have 3 top 8 placements at Worlds and are the only team other than SKT to win a mid-season invitational. This is their 4th World Championship appearance.
On to our second team out of Pool 1. Amazing Jay, please do the honors.
It's going to be Longzhou Gaming of the LCK, slotting into Group B.
Longzhou Gaming pulled off one of the most incredible splits in LCK history. The team was rebuilt at the start of 2017 around the former ROX Tigers bot lane, Prey and Gorilla. After finishing 7th in spring, they would go on to become LCK champions in summer, and not only finished first in the regular season, but also defeated SKT 3-1 in the finals, rightfully earning Korea's #1 seed at Worlds. This is their first World Championship appearance.
All right, Amazing Jay, please draw the third team from Pool 1.
Looks like G2 Esports out of the EU LCS will be our first team in Group C.
G2 Esports asserted their dominance over the region by taking their 4th consecutive EU LCS championship with a decisive 3-0 victory over Misfits, retaining the crown as the undisputed Kings of Europe. They'll head to Worlds as Europe's #1 seed with a Pool 1 berth, which they earned after making the finals at the 2017 Midseason Invitational. This is their 2nd World Championship appearance.
One team left in Pool 1. Amazing Jay, let's see who it is.
And the final #1 seed slotting into Group D is the LMS's Flash Wolves.
Flash Wolves emerged as LMS champions for the 4th consecutive split, beating rivals AHQ Esports Club in the finals with a resounding 3-0 victory. They earned the LMS a Pool 1 berth back at the Midseason Invitational and will be looking for redemption from their last Worlds appearance, which saw them bow out in the group stage. This is their 3rd World Championship appearance.
That concludes Pool 1, so now we're going to move on to Pool 2. And the teams in Pool 2 are SK Telecom T1, Samsung Galaxy from the LCK, Royal Never Give Up from China, and Team Misfits from Europe.
Also in Pool 2 is AHQ Esports Club from the LMS, TSM and Immortals from North America, and the Gigabyte Marines from Southeast Asia. Rookie, please take your spot at the drawing station and begin the Pool 2 teams when you are ready.
This is the fun part. The groups start to take shape now.
Yeah.
Let's see what our first team out of Pool 2 is. And it is SK Telecom T1, our defending champions, which will be slotting into Group A next to EDG.
SK Telecom T1 returned to Worlds as reigning champions and the chance to earn their 4th Summoners Cup. After a loss to Longzhou in the LCK Summer Finals, SKT qualified for Worlds as Korea's #2 seed on championship points. They're the most internationally decorated team in League of Legends history, and this is their 4th World Championship appearance. Every time they've attended Worlds, they've won.
Moving right along, our second team out of Pool 2, Rookie. Who's it going to be?
Samsung Galaxy moving to Group C, as it will not be able to place into A or B due to the LCK teams already in those positions.
Samsung made history repeat itself in the LCK regional qualifier as they once again knocked out KT Rolster to take Korea's #3 seed heading into Worlds 2017. Last World Championship, they made it all the way to the finals where they took SKT to 5 games, our first ever 5-game World Finals series. After coming so close to the Summoners Cup, they'll be looking to take it one step further this year.
All right, Rookie, please draw the next team from Pool 2.
And joining the #1 seed from LCK in Longzhou Gaming will be Immortals of the North American LCS.
Immortals are the #2 seed representing North America at Worlds 2017 after qualifying on championship points, despite being placed 7th in the spring split. They came heartbreakingly close to Worlds in 2016, and now, in their sophomore year, will have their chance to represent the North American LCS on the world stage after finishing 2nd in the summer split. This is their first World Championship appearance.
And again, Rookie, please pull our next team out of Pool 2.
All right, AHQ Esports Club will slot into Group A as the Flash Wolves are already in Group D.
AHQ Esports Club is the second seed representing the LMS at Worlds 2017, earning their spot in the competition after placing second in both spring and summer splits behind their rivals, Flash Wolves. They're one of the most seasoned teams competing at Worlds, as this is their 4th Worlds appearance.
I'm absolutely loving this. Let's move it right along and find out our next team out of Pool 2. And Team Misfits out of the EU LCS will be headed to Group B. Or Group D.
Team Misfits qualified for the World Championship as the second seed from Europe on championship points after placing 4th in spring and 2nd in the summer split. Their rise has been meteoric from the UK Premiership to the EU Challenger Series and onwards to Worlds, all in 1 year. As such, this is their first World Championship appearance.
3 teams left to go. Rookie, who you got for me now?
Gigabyte Marines will slot into Group B.
Gigabyte Marines earned the GPL a group stage berth at Worlds after their tremendous performance back at the midseason invitation. With their 3-0 win in the GPL finals, they were rightfully the ones to take that spot. Their hyper-aggressive playstyle will make them one of the most exciting teams to watch at Worlds 2017, where they will make their first World Championship appearance.
All right, Rookie, if you could please draw the next team.
Our second to last team is selected. And it will be Royal Never Give Up of the LPL, headed for Group C.
Royal Never Give Up earned China's number 2 seed for Worlds 2017 after finishing both spring and summer splits in 2nd place and qualifying on championship points. They're one of the only full Chinese rosters in the LPL and will get to represent their region in front of a home crowd this year. While it is their 2nd Worlds appearance, the team has plenty of Worlds experience with 2-time Worlds finalist Uzi on their roster.
Only our final team left to select. Rookie, let's see who it is.
And last but not least, TSM slotting in and finalizing Group D.
TSM are once again the number 1 seed representing North America at Worlds after a 3-1 victory over Immortals in the NALCS Finals. They've appeared in every single NALCS Finals series and managed to walk away with the trophy on 5 occasions. This is their 7th World Championship appearance, making them the only team in history to compete in every single World Championship.
All right, with that, we've drawn all the teams from Pool 2, and they've been placed in their respective groups. Now, just a reminder, the last slot in each group will be filled in at the end of the play-in stage. So that brings us to the conclusion of the draw show. Let's take another look at the groups for Worlds 2017. In Group A, it's EDG, SK Telecom T1, and AHQ Esports Club.
In Group B, we have Longzhou Gaming, Immortals, and the Gigabyte Marines.
In Group C, it's G2 Esports, Samsung Galaxy, and Royal Never Give Up.
And finally, in Group D, it's the Flash Wolves, Team Misfits, and TSM.
These are your Worlds 2017 groups, and in just a few moments, we'll be throwing it over to our analysts to break these groups down. And in the meantime, feel free to jump on Twitter and use that hashtag Worlds 2017 to join the conversation.
Now, we'd like to thank Amazing Jay and Rookie for joining us here today, and a reminder as well that Worlds kicks off on the 23rd of September. Tickets are still available, and you can find out more information at lolesports.com.
I have a feeling I know how Rookie feels about how the groups played out. We're going to take a short break. When we return, our analysts will be here to break down your groups for Worlds 2017. See you on the other side.
Hello and welcome back to the 2017 World's Draw Show. I am Jat, joined by Papa Smithy, Frost Curran, and Officio here to break down the draw. How you guys doing?
I'm feeling great. The draw was an interesting one.
Let's get first impressions. How was the LCK draw? Expected, they're the strongest in every group.
You know, if I'm doing power rankings, they're probably top 3, so
yeah.
Probably fine.
Frost Curran?
Yeah, of course we got SKT. That's just right up in there, Group A. EDG, SKT, just classic.
I like G2's group for you.
I liked it when they were, you know, they got Group C. I'm like, that's fine. We preferred Group D. Then I saw Samsung. I was like, oh, no, that's not good.
Then you saw RNG. I hear Western teams do really well in groups with Samsung and RNG, if last year is any indication.
Yeah, I'm nervous. It's best of ones. It's RNG who can go like crazy in the early game versus G2 who can be very slow in the early game.
Yeah.
You're nervous? I'm nervous for RNG. It's still best of one in China.
This is the nervous side.
Consistency, not a thing.
The winners are over there right now.
Technically, it's a best of one double round robin. Anyway, we're going to spend the next 30 minutes to an hour, however long it takes, going through the group draw. First thing we're going to touch on, though, was the play-in draw, because there is actually some interesting things there. Group A is now suddenly very interesting. Team WE versus Gambit, all the way back to Season 2.
And I was casting also Lion Gaming in Season 3. So the fact that all these 3 orgs have been around 4+ years is pretty cool, given that the play-in usually spotlights newer teams.
Yeah, effectively, it's the old guard returning there. It's a super spicy group, the fact that you have WE and Gambit, but technically that's what I think better for Gambit. It means that they're not going to run into Team WE if they exit as number 2 in that group. So frankly, I think W is the strongest Chinese seed, and I think they're the strongest team in terms of number 3 seeds out of those 4.
And I think that's a really strong thing to emphasize about the play-in format. 2 teams from each group advance, and then the number 2 seed play the number 1 seed from across group. So the other one that's really interesting to me there is Hong Kong Attitude and Fenerbahce, because that's one where they could swap the seeds, and there's a chance you have Hong Kong Attitude going up against a C9, a Fnatic, or even Team WE.
I mean, I think it's fairly safe to say that Hong Kong Attitude will be the weakest of the Pool 1 seeds in play-ins, and having a group with Fenerbahce, who's actually done really well in the Turkish Champions League, having Frozen in the mid lane and Move, the former jungler, who's been around the world a few times now.
Quad region.
Yeah, he's been in multiple regions, but he's the jungler for this team. Like, I think they actually have enough talent on their roster to win this group, and if they do that, they potentially dodge that best of 5 against a WE or a Fnatic or C9.
Yeah, and the monster of the whole play-in for me is Team WE. Like, that's the one when we're seeing all of these group draws happen, A, B, C, D, or like, well, what if WE goes into this group? Suddenly it's a lot different. Frost Curran, I know you have some pretty strong thoughts about WE in the greater LPL landscape.
I mean, we used to say in the LPL that while RNG had the better players, that WE had the better plays. That they've always been the most consistent, the smartest team. Yeah, they didn't make the final. They fell down in semifinals in a very tough best of 5. But over the course of the season, over the entire year, Team WE have been the consistent Chinese teams, and a lot of us have them as number 1, despite the fact that they're coming in as the 3rd seed.
All right, we're going to get to the main group draw now, which is a little more ripe for discussion. Let's start with Group A as well. We're going to go alphabetical order, A, B, C, D. This is what happened. EDG, the Pool 1 seed, gets the joy of pulling SKT as a Pool 2, but then they also get AHQ. So, Frost Curran, I'm going to start with you, as EDG is the Pool 1 seed. How are they feeling about this group?
It was a clincher as soon as SKT come up, but it's fine. We got the Hail Mary like AHQ. EDG and AHQ, those teams go way back. They're very comfortable with each other. EDG feel like they have a good read on AHQ, despite some of the blunders at Rift Rivals most recently. In AHQ, they're not really performing very well.
Funny enough, though, EDG and HQ have been in the same group so many times. I feel like a Worlds already. And even last year when we weren't too hyped about AHQ, they did actually do really well against EDG specifically because they know each other so well. There's always that upset chance in best of 1, but I think if you are EDG, sucks you get SKT, but most of the groups will have one of the top Korean teams. You can't really avoid it. I think getting HQ as another Pool 2 seed is a good thing for EDG, and they should be favorites to make it out of this group.
I have a kind of a different read, though, because I agree with you. If you're going to pull a Korean team, you wouldn't think that you want to pull SKT, right? Usually that's the one you want to avoid. But when it comes to SKT, we come into this tournament, even now, unsure who the top laner will be for SKT. And traditionally, EDG have struggled around top laners, specifically with Mouse struggling against, say, carry top laners. There's Khan, there's Cuvée, both of them in form, with Huni and Antara kind of unknown quantities. I think EDG are actually shaping up well if that's of the 3 Korean teams. I think EDG would fancy SKT the most.
I mean, but the thing that terrifies me is that EDG have always been such a bot-centric team, and you're now looking across or down the barrel of Bang and Wolf. You have an 80 carry iBoy for EDG. He's played literally 22 games, not series, games for his entire career so far. He's like a half split into an LPL title. Like, he's never going to face stiffer competition than, hey, welcome to your first Worlds.
Yeah, and it's also a bit of a training ground, right? Because at the end of the day, 2 teams advanced from each one of these groups. And I still put EDG as a strong favorite over AHQ. Like in 2014, EDG and AHQ went to a tiebreaker game in that group stage. I don't see something like that happening again. Yes, EDG and Clearlove specifically has had some struggles on the world stage so far. But
call him out right
this
there.
AHQ team has looked worse than in past years, even though they've made it back to Worlds. Most people weren't even expecting them to make it into the final. Raze Gaming had that really poor game, so now they're kind of here. And for a lot of the Western viewers who don't follow the LMS that closely, that may not be known.
Exactly. Like, I think with HQ, they still have this issue where they're trying to decide between mid laners. They have Chavi, they have Westall playing, and a lot of it is based on synergy with Mountain in the jungle, where Chavi's synergy is not that great. Then Westall comes in, a better synergy, but he's a weaker player. Bot lane as well is not the same that it used to be in terms of the individual level. So HQ in that sense, on the world's stage, should struggle mechanically and might just have big issues in the early game because of that.
Yeah, and even when you look at like the strong centerpiece of AHQ that's always really been Ziv in their top lane, he's also not having a great year. So kind of in every single position, they've taken a slight step backwards.
Featured lane matchup, if I was looking at one, it's definitely Scout versus Faker, right? Scout against his old organization. Scout is the only player with a 0% win rate on SKT. He played 2 professional games for SKT, lost both of them. I know he wants to make a point there. He was the 3rd string mid laner for a long while. Yeah. It's a pretty amazing stat, right?
Fun fact of the day, he's never beaten Faker.
He's never
used to be on the same team.
And he's never won on SKT. So him against Faker, it is a bit of the teacher versus pupil thing going on there, given he grew up in SKT. So it's a really fun matchup.
Yeah, I think Scout has grown so much as a player since we saw him last year. Last year, it was like Scout versus Pawn, and most of us were saying, why are they even starting Scout? Pawn is the better player, and they ended up swapping him the whole time. Obviously, Pawn went back to KT, but I think Scout really evolved as a player at the split. His champion pool is smaller than most, but when I saw him on Lucian in any of those games, or LeBlanc, those 2 particular champions, he was so spectacular on those champions with how quickly he could move to dodge and land skill shots, just seemed on a much higher level than most other mid laners. I'd almost compare his Lucian very close to what Faker did on Lucian against Taliyah, on that champion specifically. Now, whether they're on a different matchup makes it a totally different story, but I agree with you, that's an incredibly hype matchup.
And it's kind of, I mean, I don't know if you'll agree with this point, but it's kind of fun because it was Scout and Pawn, right? And now the player I'd probably say that Scout emulates the most is Pawn in terms of his play style, in terms of the fact that his high highs that we saw, especially in the grand final, they're right up there, you know, MVP of the final series, but he does have those games where you wonder how he got there. And that's kind of the surreal thing, is that it's kind of the same player, at least in play style.
It's just a double-edged sword. I mean, he's very aggressive. He plays with nameplates off. We saw that when he faced Crown at Rift Rivals. He didn't care that it was Crown. He's going to try to go for the 1v1 kills. And if it works out, Scout looks like the MVP of the final. And if it doesn't, you're like, what is actually wrong with this guy?
He was the MVP of the final. It didn't just look like it.
True.
I want to mention Mako as well, though, in the bottom lane, because there's all this talk about him kind of becoming the new captain of the team and
passing of the baton.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a much more like focus on him specifically, and while I think he's still a fantastic support, like the fact he's laning with this super young AD carry could become an issue in pure 2v2 lanes, but I think as long as like Mako plays to the absolute top level, I think actually they will be fine. I don't think Bang and Wolf have been like super dominant, especially in the summer split. So I'm actually not that concerned about just the laning phase for these 2 guys on the bottom lane. And if Mako can actually get, you know, unleashed, then I think he can do a lot of damage.
I mean, that's always been the X factor, is making sure that you can unlock Mako to roam around. The concern, though, is that iBoy, very young player, if you leave him alone, if he's farming a side lane, he'll do silly things. He doesn't have the experience, he gets picked off. But if, you know, Babysitter Mako is holding his hand, he's okay.
Yeah, and the tweak with all these groups this year, since we didn't have a direct Pool 3 draw and we're getting them through the play-in, is we don't necessarily know who the 4th team will be. We can start speculating a little bit, though. So we know the Pool 1 teams from the play-in are generally stronger. So in a theoretical world where it's Hong Kong Attitude, the LMS 3rd seed, the NA 3rd seed, the EU 3rd seed, and the Chinese 3rd seed right there, since you already have an LMS and an LPL team in this group, in EDG and HQ, if that happened, I know it's a lot of ifs, but if that happened, it would be either C9 or Fnatic who slots into this group, because you wouldn't be able to get the LPL or the LMS, which is just interesting food for thought. I prepped a stat that I have to get in here as well.
Okay.
In Korea plus China groups, There have been 2 of them in the 2014, 15, and 16 World Championship each. It's the hardest combination of group to get out of if you're the other team out. So if you're the AHQ or the Pool 3 team, this is not the group that you want to be in. It's only ever happened for Cloud9 last year and Origin back in 2015. Everyone else has failed in those groups, so tough. Do you have predictions for this one?
For this group?
Yeah.
I mean, SKT gets it first. I think EDG, even if it's Fnatic or C9 joining the group, will be favorites to take second. But I think actually both C9 and Fnatic could do some serious damage in this group here. I'm not overly convinced that EDG is looking that fantastic at the moment. I definitely agree with WE looking like they're a strong overall team. So I think Fnatic or C9 will actually be okay slotting into this group here, seeing as they can't slot into some of the other groups specifically. And it should be very interesting because AHQ should be weaker than both those teams.
I mean, frankly, the elephant in the room for EDG is still going to be Mouse in the top lane. So any team that has a strong top laner that can play a 1-3-1 is going to exploit him in a side lane. Fnatic have been known to do that. Yeah, Impact has been kind of hit and miss, but his regional finals was off the chain. And if he plays like that against Mouse, he's just going to absolutely blast him. EDG, they thrive in 5v5s. They thrive around their bottom lane. If you can absorb that with like Reckless, then I think they fall over.
Yeah, let's focus in on just specifically SKT, EDG. It does seem a little bit clear-cut, but do you see it that way? Is it almost certainly going 1, 2, 3 in that order? It's SKT, EDG, AHQ?
I would say the only bold statement I can make, because I think EDG and SKT getting out that's a pretty cut and dry prediction. I think that AHQ, in a world where it's C9 or Fnatic, come last. I actually think that right now the LMS is maybe the weakest it's ever been. You know, when you start tracking the region, Season 2, they were champions. Since then, my read so far in LMS is that the teams will struggle. Even Flash Wolves I see as a weak Pool 1 team. So I think that if either Fnatic or C9 come in, they're going to win more games than AHQ.
I think it's important to highlight here that last year, LMS, both teams, Flash Wolves and AHQ, did not make it out of groups. Flash Wolves ended up due to tiebreakers, or the tie with 2 and 4 being last in Group B, and AHQ were third in Group C as well. So while there were a lot of hype for Flash Wolves coming into MSI, that obviously didn't end up actually working too well for Flash Wolves. It's hard now to get super excited for those reasons. It's not just randomly out of nowhere. It's actually now due to MSI performance and Worlds last year.
Yeah, in 2014 and 2016, LMS failed to make it out of the group stage. I tend to agree, SKT strong favorites in this group. EDG, I want to give them more credit because they are the LPL champions here. I think that means a lot for them. I do rank them as the #1 team from the LPL coming into this. So I think they're a strong second. And if they do get a C9 or Fnatic into this group, yes, last place, I wonder if HQ even wins a game, if that is the scenario.
Strong.
So it's going to be tough for them. That wraps up Group A. Group B is the next one we're touching on. Longzhu is the Pool 1 in Group B, followed by IMT and the Gigabyte Marines. Papa Smithy, as the Pool 1 representative from Korea here, I'm going to call you Longzhu. How do you think this worked out?
I mean, Longzhu Gaming is such a fun team to look at. I mean, there's a lot of echoes of the Rocks Tigers from last year in the members, but also in the play style. In terms of groups, it's a pretty soft one for them, but I think North America should be probably the most heartened by this because it's the sort of group where, depending on who is penciled in, is in a really good spot to make it out of groups.
Yeah, I think Immortals love this group.
Oh my goodness.
Like, when we saw this, we were like, man, this is so good for Immortals. Gigabyte Marines, obviously we can talk more about them after, but they're not as strong as we saw them at MSI. Immortals specifically, also against Longzhu in the best of 1. Like, Smithy, in my opinion, is super, super good, and I love how creative he is in the early game. Against a rookie jungler in Cuz from Longzhu, like, there is definitely ways for Immortals to get early advantages based on that. Problem is, obviously, there's a Khan in the top lane you got to deal with, and it's tough to win the bot lane 2v2 as well, but at least through Smithy, I think they can actually do some damage early game against Longzhu.
I think Immortals is just over the moon with this group right here. I think even though Gigabyte Marines made a lot of noise at MSI, I still think they're probably the weakest team in this group. We'll talk about them in a minute because I know Frost Current has a lot of good prep on them. But yeah, this is obviously depending on the Pool 3 team that gets pulled in here. They have a very high chance of getting out of this group, especially because as Longzhu is the #1 Korean team, that's off such a small amount of games. They were not even a strong team in the spring split from LCK standards, and then, yes, they were the champions in an incredibly competitive LCK split, and they have a lot of that inexperience working in there. Still think they're strong favorites, but I can see a world in which Immortals can take a game.
I mean, I got a couple of points. I mean, on Longzhu, on a read on how strong Longzhu are, it was difficult even for me when it came to the LCK final because a lot of teams tipped SKT there. A lot of coaches, I believe all coaches in the LCK predicted SKT. I predict SKT because they had the runs on the board. You had to think that they would have the experience edge, and then Longzhu overcame. And people will say that Longzhu play one style when it comes to the top dominated style, getting Khan ahead. But SKT had that intel and still weren't able to beat them in the final. So especially when it comes to getting out of groups, high expectations. Fun fact, though, we do actually have Song, the previous coach of Longzhu from the spring season, against Zoldo, and Flame was a top lane sub for Longzhu last year as well. So Flame versus Khan is going to be a fiery matchup anyway.
Old
but
versus new.
But I do love the callbacks there in terms of history.
Yeah, I do want to celebrate Longzhu a little bit as well, just because you have players like BDD with a double-digit KDA in the LCK, which we hadn't seen for a really long time. Felt like, this is a compliment, the best KDA player in the world coming into Worlds right now, because so much of that team was all in, and he played the mid lane in the best way for that setup, which was better than Kuro did it back with the Prey and Gorilla duo.
And I hesitate because KDA players usually a backhanded compliment, right? It's usually suggesting that they're not putting out the damage or that they're prizing KDA over anything else. But I challenge you to go back and watch the games because he will put his body on the line. He largely plays as a facilitator for Khan. He'll play the Taliyah and Galio largely to roam top lane. He knows his role. He's not. There's been other players who I think justifiably have been criticized for being KDA players. He's just a good player with a great KDA.
Yeah. And again, it's frankly obvious that Longzhu are the definitive favorites going to this group. But I like the fact that the group is kind of a softball for them because there's still a lot of players that haven't played necessarily under this type of spotlight, that they get to get their feet wet, they get to cut their teeth and kind of have an easy walk through groups as a warm-up before going into the best ups.
And also just think their playstyle is going to be such a wake-up call for a lot of Western teams. Because a lot of Western teams play fairly slow at the moment. Like it's these big tank comps and, you know, you get to late game with a Tristana and a Orianna and you just play big late game team fights. When you then face Longzhu now with a mid laner who will push lane and roam top, a top laner who will constantly play aggressive in your face, and a bot lane that you can't kill 2v2 because it's Gorilla and Prey who will for sure match, if not beat, most bot lanes here, you know, during this tournament. A lot of these very slow teams are just going to get such a wake-up call being like, okay, this is fast now. You got to adapt. Your top lane is going to get wrecked if you are not fast enough and your comp is too focused on scaling. You're just going to lose early and you can't do anything.
And that's true for every team in this group as well, right? Longzhu defied the meta in a lot of ways with how well they could play around top lane and how quickly they could play the game. Gigabyte Marines surprised a ton of people at MSI because they would dive bot lane on wave 2 instead of wave 4, right? They'd roam down with a level 3 mid laner and kill you. They've also switched players, so you can't even use that as a beat. Frostkern, what do you think about Gigabyte Marines here?
Yeah, they've changed up through the positions. Archie Noe and Saya coming in for their bot lane now. The thing is everyone's going to remember Levi, but the player that you actually really need to focus on is their new AD carry. He's worked with the coach for 2.5 years, so he's not just like a straight-up rookie coming in, obviously not under this type of spotlight, this type of pressure. Yes, the Gigabyte Marines have changed up their playstyle since MSI, but some things remain pretty consistent, and the quote from the coach is, get ready for some cheese, because it's coming.
And I like this as well because for as much as I think this is a good group for Immortals to be in and they're going to be happy about this, I think Gigabyte Marines are going to be pretty happy about this group too. Because I think Immortals showed a lot of nerves on the North American final stage, throwing a 10,000 gold lead in that game 4 against TSM to ultimately give over the championship and not get a game 5. And Gigabyte Marines will come out, punch you in the mouth, and you don't have that long to recover before your next game.
Right, like Immortals, Papa Smithy and I, we were talking about this yesterday regarding Immortals. We were like, they seem really good at following a game plan that obviously is well prepared beforehand, and a lot of it involves like good early jungling from McSmithy that kind of sets up the carries on the team, and then suddenly Ole can roam as well, and you have this super cool like snowball machine almost on Immortals side.
I mean, Song has definitely given this team structure. That's the thing I was most impressed by, is they know how to play the early to mid game. So that's when the cheese comes in and suddenly you're ripping up your script, being like, wait, this is not how we were supposed to play, like fourth wave, all those sort of things. That's going to be a really vibrant matchup. And then just to finally touch on the Flame versus Khan matchup, it feels like Khan is what people called Flame in 2013, right? Season 3 Flame was that big top lane carry. It feels like every year, apart from last year, we had the one player who was the last bastion of top lane carry, save the famous one from Invictus Gaming years ago. It is really fun to see Khan versus Flame, because I think Flame watches Khan plays and wishes that he could unshackle himself and return to 4 years ago.
Flame watches Flame plays on his stream from 2013.
That's
and Khan, so one in the same.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very big names in the top lane, and then you have Archie, who is now the top laner for Gigabyte Marines. He was, of course, the support, last split and during MSI. And this just makes me so sad because I think his biggest weakness is that his mechanics are just very poor. And he's an older player now. I believe he's 25, 26 years
25.
old. 25. So
is Flame, technically.
Fair. Flame's been
Still
practicing.
Game. 26.
Flame's been practicing in the hardest environment in LCK and now moved on. Archie is not getting the same practice, and he will be a massive liability in terms of the actual laning and his skills as a top laner. Against Khan and even against Flame, that should be an issue.
Fisher, I got 2 words for you. Lane swap.
It might be lane swaps. That might be it.
The Marine way.
Really, when Archie's sitting there and saying, "Okay, Longzhu," he's saying lane swap.
It's true.
There's no world in which they actually let those guys
No.
They're probably just going to keep lane swapping.
But here's the thing, Archie has the confidence. Like, talking to this team pretty
He shouldn't.
extensively.
He shouldn't.
It's not a confidence.
No, he lane swaps. Because what happens if you don't have confidence?
It's not a confidence that he's going to win. Like, this guy, by no means, like, they do not have a delusion that they're going to come in here and be able to match up, especially in this group. But talking with them, the only team that they were afraid of was Flash Wolves because the team knows them intimately. They have this kind of ingenuity in that they want to play a chaos style. And they want to play chaos style because they just want to, like, mix everything up. They want to get it as far away from standard as possible. Archie is confident. He's like, I'm going to go down 40 CS, but that's fine. I'm just going to do my thing when it comes to the skirmishing.
Oh, I hate that. That's fine. It's just 40 CS.
It's 40 CS.
If they kill the turrets. Okay, time for some confident predictions. I got a couple questions. Percentage chance Longzhu makes it out of the group. I say 100%.
I'm going 100% as well.
100%.
Wow.
Clearly, like, we know it's actually not 100%, but...
What? No, it's 100%.
Okay, there we go.
What's the chance that they
Fnatic
finish
gets in the
first?
group, Immortal
Upsets?
Fnatic beats them, bam, Longzhu out.
Yeah.
There you go.
No,
Okay.
but here's the thing. When it comes
That
to
won't actually happen.
the Immortals percentage, do you start
The
to sweat a
follow-up
little
now
bit?
exactly is the Immortals percentage.
It depends on which team joins the group.
Yeah, let's assume... what if this is just a 3-team group, right? Just for the purpose of this hypothetical. What is the chances...
Wow,
that
it really
NA
needs to make it out.
hypothetical here, isn't
What
it?
is the percentage that Gigabyte Marines is higher than Immortals in this group?
10%? 5%?
5-10%.
Yeah.
Maximum. Depends on what kind of crazy strategies they have.
It's best of ones. If it
I
was
thought
best
you
of
guys
threes
would... I think it's higher. I don't want to mess around with Gigabyte Marines. They went 5 games with TSM, and they took games off
lineup.
of many
But
teams.
different
They're
lineup.
also-
And they say it's been an improved lineup, though.
But the lineup
would
has
say
been
that.
improved, but they've also changed up their style, and they don't feel that they are as strong as they were at MSI. Optimus, in particular, isn't performing very well. So it used to be that they would, throw like 20 people into the mid lane. Now it's about really looking at Levi and really looking at No Way as their AD carry. And then suddenly your power point isn't early. They want to skirmish. They need to have that early power. If they're fighting around their AD carry, suddenly that moves their power point, 15, 20, 25 minutes.
I can't believe I'm the biggest skeptic here. I give Gigabyte Marines 20% to finish ahead of Immortals. You said, like, what, 2?
You're just
No,
trying
I
to
said 5 to 10.
downplay AA.
I joined in on the 5 to 10.
I've been around Fisher enough times to know that if you downplay your own region, you can only be heartened or expected.
I mean, you guys are going to downplay my region anyway. I don't have to do it this time around, so it's going to be super easy for me. I think Immortals, they're going to make it out.
All right, I think it's perfect time to go on to Group C, where G2 was the Pool 1 seed of
100%
Group
chance.
C. A few teams got drawn in there with them, by the way. Samsung and RNG. As someone who partakes in TSM games from time to time, I do remember a group last year that had TSM as the Pool 1 seed who was rewarded with Samsung and RNG. Deficio, how does it taste?
Bad, man. I'm so nervous for G2 in these best of ones. I think Samsung in many ways will be the better version of G2. Specifically, they don't rely on early snowballing. They have really good mid to late game, both in terms of actually how to play around objectives, but also late game team fights, which is where G2 still finds most of their success. Samsung can do that, probably just a level above it. And RNG is this boom or bust team, which is either rolling over you in the early game or just falling apart completely. And those teams tend to do really well against G2 in best of ones because you don't have a lot of time to adapt and prepare for these guys. And if you lose the first best of one to RNG, suddenly you find yourself sitting outside of top 2, and you have to win the next one against them to make it in. And that's scary, man.
And their group stages, even if they had a good MSI bracket stage, haven't been good.
Exactly.
4-6 MSI, 1-5 Worlds last year, 2-8 MSI the year before that, right? Just not good results. And this could still get harder as a group. there's a world in which C9 gets pulled into this as well. So this is shaping up as the group of death, so to speak, in this world.
Usually Group D, but it seems like Group C this time.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Samsung, in this group?
I agree with Fischer in that both G2 and Samsung default to control style, very much defensive teams. Samsung especially, you look at their gauntlet run, kind of perfected defensive style to beat KT in the manner that they did. I think RNG looks at this group and they're pretty heartened because there's no way RNG doesn't win at least 2 games, I think, against G2 and Samsung. I think they can take a game off either of those teams, potentially 2 off one of them. I think they really do have a shot because they're the wild card of these 3 teams when it comes to play style. Because Samsung, I think, can be beat in best of ones. That's one of their weaknesses. They will try to pull it late, but if MLXG has a hot game, if Xiaohu really gets ahead, Crown has been struggling so far this season when it comes to laning matchups and actually excelling in the 1v1. I think Samsung gets out of the group, but RNG are a real wild card here on how well they'll do.
I mean, if there's any Korean team that a Chinese team wanted to run into, and naturally everyone wants to face Faker, but you don't really want to face SKT.
Right.
But it is Samsung. They do have confidence against this team because they like to go for the late scaling, team fights. And if you're team fighting against an LPL team, that sometimes just turns out into a coin flip. The cool thing about RNG is that stylistically, they can play a 1-3-1 or they can play a 5v5. Their vision is actually the best in terms of any team in the LPL. That goes back to Ming, their rookie shot caller. He said it himself. He studies a lot of the LCK VODs. He studies a lot of the LCK vision patterns. So it's actually quite surprising how confident RNG's vision can be so they can play the corners of the map.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about Uzi on this team as well. Because he didn't play for the entire split. They had Wushin for some of it as well. Uzi's back now. I feel like when Uzi's in the game, the entire game state shifts. MLXG is actually just a tri-lane half the time, it feels like, for that team, even though Xiaohu was the league MVP. So is it a detriment, a benefit? How will this team look with their, even the lanes they play through at Worlds, do you think?
The nice thing about RNG is that they have the capacity, and they've also trained in playing through every single lane. Like last split, they used to play heavily through the top side, and Let Me. He's a carry-oriented top laner. He's a big Gnar player. Xiaohu's having the split of his career. He's probably the most dominant player on this team. And when Uzi's on the roster, that says something to how good the Little Tiger is performing. And then Uzi can just sometimes win you games because he's just entitled to miracles sometimes. He's just that type of veteran talent. MLXG, he's the weak point. He's very inconsistent, super high highs, super low lows. He doesn't really jungle. He's just a snowball mechanic at this point. Throw away this idea.
It's pretty good against G2 normally.
of the Lee Sin God. This guy's gonna grab Sejuani, he's gonna grab Maokai, and literally level 2 gank bottom, level 3 gank mid, level 4 gank top, and just rinse, wash, and repeat.
And I think Xiaohu's the player I've definitely been focused on the most with RNG because around him has been a revolving door, but it's not been like for like. I mean, the difference between Uzi and swapping in and out Uzi is going to be a lot of jungle attention, like you guys are saying. So I've been really impressed with Xiaohu maintaining a very high level when everything around him changes, not just the top lane, it's not just the bot lane. For him to play equally good or exceed in that sort of a scenario is a huge big tick next to his name.
And that's also why I'm just looking at mid lane for this group specifically. Sure, Crown didn't have the greatest summer split ever, but I think he will bounce back during Worlds. You then have Perkz as well, who's playing really, really well here. If you look at the semifinal and the final in the EU LCS.
I mean, a great year for Perkz.
It's been a great year for Perkz overall. And then, of course, Xiaohu playing basically the best he's ever played. You have a very, very stacked mid lane. And then you have a lot of questionable junglers, where you don't always 100% know what you're going to get when it's a trick in group stages and MLXG with his early game. And then,
hey, we know what we'll get from Ambition.
Ambition, we know we're going to get a lot of farming.
Well-rounded team fight jungler.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot of farming and not a whole lot of action in that sense. But you wouldn't highlight the junglers as the star players in this group. You're definitely looking at mid, and you might even also start looking at least for some of the teams, at like a Sven and an Uzi. But then Ruler is, of course, not the biggest star on Samsung's side.
And that's why I think RNG stylistically are the real Achilles heel of Samsung, because in my head, when I see a game where RNG's early game works out, where MLXG gets ahead, I'm like, what will Ambition do? He'll pull back and farm. They really will play defensive, and RNG can run over teams, and it could happen in this group.
I'm a little bit concerned RNG just won't snowball the game correctly, though, because one thing is winning the laning phase. We've seen that quite a lot. But in this meta, when there's a lot of these really good engaged tank comps with strong scaling mages, if you do not execute Baron plays properly, which most teams will have issues with against LCK teams, these teams will find their openings. They will find their way back into games. And then once you get past the 30-minute mark, that early laning phase lead you had, it doesn't matter anymore. You're now full late game. And that's where G2 and Samsung can find big advantages against RNG specifically. And also for G2's side, I like the fact that, you know, Xiaohu and Uzi are two of the guys we're looking at here, because on their side, it's Sven and Perk we're also looking at. And I don't think individually these guys will struggle against RNG. A lot of it is based on MLXG's early ganking and then the surprise factor in that sense.
And this is... I'm sorry, the other name that I really want to highlight, though, because not a lot of people know about it, is Ming, the support. Like, taking over for Mata is a huge deal. This guy is actually the shot caller of the team in his first split in the LPL. Those are already huge shoes to fill, and he's only gotten stronger. RNG are one of the most decisive teams that when they get Baron, they almost immediately close out on top of the Baron, and so much of that is because of the vision control that Ming is setting up, because it allows Xiaohu to play those side lanes safely and create opportunities where they force numbers advantage, catch teams off guard on Baron.
I'm dreading the question if you ask for predictions. Predictions
Not yet.
is
I'm going to give us a little bit more time. I'm
writing notes.
Then we're going to make the predictions. Even talking about the mid lane, why I'm so excited for this group, we're not sure which version of those players is going to show up. Spring Split Crown, Summer Split Crown, 2016 Worlds Crown. Because Summer Split Crown wasn't as good as Spring, and for Perks, regular season third team LCS Crown, or Lane Kingdom Perks that was 2v1ing people in the playoffs, right? And then, I can't believe we didn't talk that much about Ruler, Uzi, and Sven. Maybe the strongest AD carry setup we have in any of the groups here at Worlds. So a lot of really cool stuff going on in this group.
It's just a lot of individual talent in this group here, which is what also makes it so exciting when it comes to comparing the players and the lanes against each other, because we've even completely skipped the top lane.
Cuvée.
In this sense, there's Cuvée, who's like one of the best top lanes in the world.
Top two.
So you have that setup where Cuvée might just enjoy life, you know, on the top side, and it will be harder, at least for RNG and G2, to punish that side, but you can definitely do that against G2 specifically. Like, Expect is a target when it comes to early ganking, where you can actually expose that quite a bit, and he falls behind, but typically he can get back in the game and do okay. He's just not really the guy they play around on the side of G2.
But your worry there is that, especially against Samsung, right, is that maybe Cuvée runs over Expect, but probably not the counterpoint. You probably won't have Expect running over Cuvée, and then if they pull it late because Expect got run over, Samsung are best late. So that's why I think stylistically...
That's why I hate Samsung for G2. I think Samsung is such a tough one for them.
Really hard for G2 to match up with them. Restrictions from play-in teams that can fall into this one. That means no Fnatic and no Team WE, based on the fact there's an EU and an LPL team. Anyone else would be fair game. With that, who wants to go first with predictions? The two teams that are making out of this group.
I'm going to say that I don't actually have as much faith in terms of consistency for RNG. I don't think it's going to be back and forth. I think it's either going to be RNG will smash this group and they'll do great because of the stylistic matchup of playing early versus late, or the meta will shift where you have the absorbing supports, you know, we have the heal barrier, and that they throw everything that they can in the early game, it just gets absorbed, and then they get outscaled or out-team fight late game. So I think either RNG come in super hot and heavy, like straight out of the gate and smash all of their games because they play early, or they get figured out and they lose every single game because G2 and Samsung Galaxy will just walk past them.
And in a possible prediction, is that like a 60-40 there first? Is that like a 20-80 that they pull it off first?
I'll weight them because I think individually their talent is that high. So I'll weight them slightly over G2. Sorry, Deficio.
Don't blame you. It's best of ones, man.
But Samsung's through.
Yeah, Samsung's.
Yeah. Samsung heavy favorites. I mean, I believe in G2's experience now. Like, there is no longer the excuse of, these B1s, we're not used to them. Like, they've played plenty of them so far. When it comes to preparing for this event, they have multiple weeks now to study RNG, to study MLXG specifically. You would think they can come in prepared enough for what he's going to do in the early game that could potentially throw them off. So I think it's actually fairly realistic that G2 and RNG play 1-1 in this group, but I'm going to just give it to G2 slightly to take that second place, because I think they are a team that will prepare better than RNG will. I know, you know, predicting G2 out of groups at Worlds, it's a risky one, but Samsung gets first, G2 takes second.
And I come back to what you were talking about, the different iterations of Crown, because Crown's performances in 2016 Worlds, spring season when he was the regular season MVP, and then this season were wildly different, you know, getting run over by Faker in the playoffs in a way that I didn't think could happen in that matchup. But I think the way the predictions have to go is you have to go based on available data, not kind of the what-ifs and what could really happen. And based on available data, I think this is about the best group that RNG could stylistically draw, because they really do have win conditions against both G2 and Samsung, which is unlikely for them. I think there are just certain groups where RNG, you have no faith in them getting out of groups, but my gut instinct is they get out of this group next to Samsung.
I hate you guys.
That's fair.
I mean, you're in a tough position, Deficio. You want you to succeed. They're the Pool 1.
I actually think they are really good, but I said that every tournament. So.
You said
How's that working out
since
for
the
you?
beginning of time.
Hey, MSI worked pretty well.
I think you've only been saying that since they changed their name to G2.
It's true.
Yeah, and I do have some more stats from this. As far as the years we've had since this format, 2014, 2015, 2016, Korean teams have made it out of groups 8 out of 9 times, Chinese teams 6 out of 9, EU teams 3 out of 9. And the previous one I mentioned, when anyone else is in a group with a Chinese and a Korean team, low chances. Even just based on the trends, I think it's hard to predict G2 coming out of this one. But then you look at RNG going 5 games in the LPL final, who I do see currently as a stronger region. Xiaohu looking so good as long as they come in practice and as long as Samsung performs the way they do. I think that's the 2 teams we're getting out of this group.
G2.
Deficio's on board. Time to move on to our final group as well, Group D. This is the one that Flash Wolves ended up being drawn into as the final Pool 1 team. They also drew in Misfits, and I can't believe they waited this long to pull them out. TSM is going to be pretty happy about this one. Do have to point out, though, the TBD team here, as we were talking about at the top of the show, the teams from the play-in can come in here, and there are 3 exclusions from the play-in. It can't be the Hong Kong Attitude team is the #1 team from the LMS. It can't be Fnatic, and it can't be C9. So if all the Pool 1 teams were to move out of play-in, WE would be in this group, almost no matter what happens in the actual draw.
And
so
that makes it super
it can get harder, but if there's some upsets in the play-in and you're throwing in Direwolves into this one, you're feeling a lot better as someone in this group. But it's looking like there's a decent chance of WE dropping into this as well.
Yeah, I think obviously if you are TSM, you're very happy here. You get the weakest of the Pool 1 seeds. We already talked a lot about LMS and some of their struggles as a region. Like Flash Wolves have really not improved since MSI. Mabel even, I would say, have probably declined in terms of his individual performance. Now that is something, obviously when it comes to the boot camp before Worlds and the actual World group stage, it can bounce back. These big players like Mabel tend to show up when it matters. But in this case here, it's just been rough for them because they still rely so much on support jungle, but they don't have the really good carries to back up whatever lead these guys are giving them compared to a lot of the other international teams. And I think that's where TSM, with Bjergsen and Doublelift, can rely a lot more on late game and have a really strong backline. There is still that off chance that TSM's early game is shaky against things like Kasa, Sword Art, and I'm even going to highlight Maxlaw and Ignor on the side of Misfits. They can actually play some really creative and good early games, and that is where they can get advantages.
Yeah, and I'm going to preface this with saying, if this is the punishment for not doing well at MSI, do it all the time. It's absolutely fine. I do not want that G2 spot in the other group. So I think TSM has a much easier draw than they had last year. With that being said, I don't think TSM is as strong this year as they were last year. Their early game is a big worry, I think, even if their mid and late game has been so good. They do control the game, and they've learned that part of the game. But this is the type of group you want to be able to snowball on, being able to take down Misfits and Flash Wolves. So the older TSM, I think, would have been out of this group.
It's funny, because I kind of have a different read on TSM. I mean, statistically, I agree with you. And when it comes to their early game, it's not as polished as it was last year. But I feel like overall the level of competition in NA has gone up in summer season. I know Rift Rivals was not the best, maybe not a full reflection of things.
I mean,
but
if we're talking about Rift Rivals, then it's settled.
It's a very important tournament.
We were learning during Rift Rivals. We realized the meta some of our teams played wasn't the
But what I'll say about TSM is they had different styles of game. Like they had games like when they fell 10,000 gold behind Immortals. They were challenged in ways they weren't last year. So I actually have more faith in TSM this year, which is kind of a weird thing to say as a Korean analyst, but...
Clutching it out in close games, right? Like, if they fall behind against Flash Wolves, I think this TSM team has a better chance of beating them than they did at MSI, with the way they've been able to shot call and play throughout the mid and late game, so...
But also with the meta. Like, the meta is actually, it's a lot easier to play these late game comps right now compared to the early snowball comps, because you have these really strong engage tools. So if the team is trying to snowball with 1-3-1 comms, you know, assassins, whatever it is, you know, strong split pushers, these big tanks can just literally group mid and just start hard engaging on you. And a lot of teams are using that to get back in games and get to late game, which should benefit them.
And so you look at the group and you say, okay, Flash Wolves, I already said earlier, it feels like the weakest the LMS has been. So definitely the weakest of the Pool 1 seeds. You look at Misfits, and I kind of think of Splice of last year when it comes to surprise that they've made it through a second seed, coming to Worlds, and largely, I don't know if it's a learning excursion, but they're certainly being counted against on in many different ways. So you look at TSM in this group, and I think they're eyeing first spot. I think it's a possibility. Of course, WE coming in would warp the identity, but as it stands right now, if you're TSM, you're stoked.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's that if Team WE slots into this group, I'm actually great with this group. I look at Flash Wolves, and unfortunately, WE have a great record against the Flash Wolves. Flash Wolves Maple, it's about redefining what that duo is. It's no longer the Maple Karsa, it's the Karsa Sordar. And Sordar is definitively probably the strongest LMS performer, in my opinion.
Yep.
But if WE make it out of their plans, if they slot into this group, I think that's the easiest first place walk they're going to have.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about TSM.
Yeah.
Misfits. Very surprising Pool 2 seed from Europe.
Yeah, they came into playoffs being 6 and 7 from the regular season, and by most teams, like standards, they're like, these guys are probably the weakest of the 6 EU playoff teams. That's at least what people thought before the quarterfinal. Then they completely destroy Unicorns of Love. They destroy Fnatic as well in the semifinal, and while they didn't do well against G2 in the actual final, it was a fantastic run from these guys, and I think people will underestimate them quite a lot.
Sure.
But I think this is the kind of team who can improve so much from a boot camp, because they've already boot camped before the LCS year even started, when they picked up Kakao and Power Vivo. You know, obviously replaced Kakao with Maxlaw now, but still, they were already boot camping in Korea. They got used to kind of the setup. They also have a really good coaching staff, in my opinion, with a really good head coach, good assistant coach in Hiva, who's a former player, and analysts at home that are all there with these guys for the boot camp. So this kind of team actually won in playoffs because they prepared way better than the teams they played against. They identified the weaknesses of these European teams. They punished it super, super hard, shut them down, especially a lot about like Maxlaw and Power Vivo playing through mid lane. They can do the same in this group. And they will be one of those teams coming in super, super prepared and actually practiced. And that could also surprise even a team like TSM.
And piggybacking off the idea of like Power of Evil as a good pivot point for Misfits, if you look at Maple, who's underperforming, and if Team WE make it into, it's Shie, who's also had kind of a rough back half of his split, maybe a smaller effective champion pool. Yeah, if he gets the Lucian, he can go off, he can be crazy, but normally it's kind of like a defensive Galio. I think there are ways that Power of Evil can exploit the other two teams, and then it's just looking down the barrel of Bjergsen.
You said a lot of positive things about him. It sounds a lot like Splice and the way we were trying to say how they could do it this year. But then the question is, will they? Like, how probable is this? They are still the 6 and 7 team, and if you over-prepare for European LCS, are you really going to over-prepare Worlds veterans and Flash Wolves who have been there about 4 times at this point, or TSM who's been there every single year? I see it as being a pretty unlikely scenario.
I mean, I think the chance is there. There's still a lot of teams around the world who do not invest that much into actual preparation for whoever they're playing and focus more on themselves. I think there is chance for Misfits. And regarding like Splice and Misfits, like I 100% see how we can compare them. I have more hopes in the Misfits organization, the staff around, to actually help this team. And I think with a player like Maxlaw, who I really want to highlight in the jungle, while he might not be the best jungler on his own in this group here, the fact that he is a shot caller and super, super good at reading the game and spend a lot of time on really studying, like especially LCK teams and how they're playing with vision, with everything. He's the kind of guy who can come in to these kind of games and be super, super good at understanding what to do, actually, especially to beat the Flash Wolves. I think that's the key one for Misfits. It doesn't even need to be beat TSM. It can be literally take down Flash Wolves, and you can make it out of this group.
Yeah, depending on who comes in as the seed. Is that predictions? Locking it in?
I mean, this group is impossible to predict right now because we don't know if it's WE coming.
Of course. Let's assume that it isn't. Let's assume that we have some upsets in there. W gets drawn somewhere else. And we got Fenerbahce or Team One or something.
Yeah, I think there's a fairly realistic chance Misfits can make it out. I think them and Flash Wolves will be fighting really, really closely between each other. I don't actually want to give Flash Wolves a huge advantage right now, just based on how LMS have been looking. But realistically, I'll go TSM Flash Wolves as my 2 teams, but I think Misfits will be right behind them.
Yeah, and I mean, don't want to speak for everyone, but if W makes it into this group, we put them as the favorite.
Put them first.
Yeah. Still same question, though, assuming WE's not in this group.
I think I have to stay with conventional logic, which would be TSM and Flash Wolves. I think they are the 2 big favorites there. I think Misfits...
me some conventional logic.
Well, I mean, I think that's the way you have to go. I don't think there's any real elephant in the room that means that Misfits will rise, on average, better than Flash Wolves and TSM. So I think they'll win some games, but I can't see them winning 3 or more.
I mean, this hasn't been the first time that all the analysts have come out and said, you know, LMS, they're looking super weak this year. They're probably just going to fall over. And yeah, the LMS has been struggling internationally, but for whatever reason, we always say they're going to be super weak, and then they overperform to an extent, or maybe they use their boot camping
Except for the last year, basically.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
But even at like Rift Rivals, they still had a pretty decent showing, and I know it's like hard to extrapolate like Rift Rivals, although definitely counts into the world stage.
They might disagree.
We talk a lot about like regional strength, and we use that as the way that we rank a lot of things. But at the end of the day, NA has made it out of groups 33% of the time over the last 3 years. EU, the same. LMS, the same. All of them are at a 33% clip of making it out of groups. So
what's Korea at?
Korea normally don't make it out of groups.
81, not 100, as you may have thought. Yeah.
There's always
you have
things
some
to work
explaining
on.
to do.
Always things to work on.
But like, there's so much pressure, honestly, on TSM looking at this group, because I think all of us were a little bit afraid of like overhyping this team. Also with last year, where they were in this super tough group and didn't make it out. Then MSI happens, where once again, super close, but just do not make the cut towards the end, and it's G2 and Flash Wolves playing you know, the semifinals. There is enough there with this TSM lineup to say that they are not guaranteed to just get out of this group. And if they do not make it out, it's actually a huge disappointment because you're looking at a second seed from Europe that came out of nowhere. You're looking at Flash Wolves right now, who's, again, not the most hyped up team, and you don't even know which the third pool team will be. So they honestly have to make it out, but I think there is definitely chances that Misfits and Flash Wolves can surprise them.
Yeah, up until this point, TSM is very happy. They don't know who the Pool 3 team is going to be. That could complicate things. And I don't think they're going to take anything for granted as far as the confidence level coming into Worlds. It was sky high last year. I feel like anyone who followed that team last year, a lot of us were predicting them out of that hard group and also even possibly to make it to the semifinals. I think you're kind of starting from square one and taking it one game at a time. As far as my predictions, if it's not WE in that group, I have it TSM, Flash Wolves, Misfits. I don't have that much faith in the Misfits team off of the 3 weeks of strong performances they had.
And that's fair.
It's a fragile strategy, so to speak, playing around mid lane and the way they're able to get Power of Evil ahead so often, especially in this group with Maple and Bjergsen.
Yeah, they obviously, of course, have other players who are actually very good. I think Ignore is one who gets overlooked a little bit. Reminds me in many ways of, you know, a Mako in that sense, where
Heavy roam.
Heavy roam if he can. Like, he's fine sitting and making sure Hansama, the AD carry, is fine in the laning phase, but if he can get out of this lane, suddenly he's super good at grouping up with his jungler and make big plays on things like Blitzcrank as well, that can really start snowballing in an early game, and then Alfari up in the top lane.
I mean, when he was an LCK player, he was known for his skill shot accuracy. So the Hook Champions, for example, was his wheelhouse. So he is a player who can capture the imagination, and I come into this tournament really thinking that support will be a pivotal role when it comes to the importance of certain roles in the meta. So Ignar is definitely a game winner. He could win a game off his own bat.
But again, that's why you have to give so much respect to Flash Wolves, because Maple is falling down, Sword Art is stepping up. And you want to talk about Hook champions, like Thresh is such a pivotal pick in the LMS.
He's a big Blitzcrank player, too.
Because of Sword Art.
Who did I miss in predictions? Everyone get there?
TSM Flash Wolves.
TSM Flash Wolves. That's mostly it for the group draw. We're through the groups, but are there any outside things you want to talk about as we're closing up? Deficio?
NA can be so happy with this group draw.
Dude,
so
this
far.
is amazing.
Like,
this is the best draw they have ever had, which is a little disappointing in the fact that now there's no more excuses. You can't say you had a bad draw.
But is that disappointing or exciting?
You can use that all the time.
It's right there.
That's an evergreen excuse.
I am going to raise a little bit of a flag and give Deficio a bit of hope. I know we're all like strong on Samsung Galaxy and RNG, but RNG just came off of a 7-game win streak and then went 2-0 in the finals and then lost it in a reverse sweep.
That's really worrisome.
Yeah, you look at Uzi's face, it pretty much tells it all. So yeah, there's tons of time for RNG to right the ship, but Uzi does have that reputation of being an emotional player. You know, that was the most intense game he's probably had to go through.
Do you know why he had the pads between his ears and the headset?
It was really hot and it's to absorb sweat.
I figured it was something simple like that.
I think just generally, like with G2, the problem is that I think a lot of people around the world respect them a lot and say these guys, they're good.
For sure. Sven, Mithy.
Yeah, Sven, Mithy.
So much Worlds experience. Semi-finalists in 2015.
Exactly, and you have Perkz in the mid lane who, at MSI, you know, showed up big time and was one of the best performing, if not the best performing mid laner during the tournament. The problem is still this best of one issue, because as a team, they are really good when they face someone, and then after going back and analyze, okay, what went wrong? What is it we need to do different for next time? How do we stop this from happening again? But in best of ones, you often do not have the time to do that because it's so quickly you end up losing 1 or 2 games and you find yourself really far down. And that will just always be an issue for them. The players have come out in interviews and said they're nervous in the best of ones. If they can make it out, I think they can do some serious damage in best of 5s. 100%, because they are playing some really good League of Legends and they have these superstar carries they can rely on. Problem is, get to best of 5, and that's the tricky one.
Anything we missed with the LPL teams that you want to say before we sign off?
No, just to emphasize that I think that Team WE are really the seed to watch out for. I think that they have the superior talent in a lot of positions. Like if you just go lane by lane, like Mystic versus Uzi, those are probably your 2 top ADCs. And Uzi got the better of Mystic last time, but it's pretty much even because Mystic got the better of Uzi last time.
Yeah, I love watching those 2 AD carries. Players to watch for Korea.
Oh, players to watch.
Player to watch.
Khan is probably the most interesting player to watch in that I think everyone was really hyped on Khan, but he's shown he can play one style, and if he's forced somehow into playing a more team-focused initiation strategy, he doesn't provide that. So I think Khan is going to be the wild card performer, but Faker comes into this tournament on a huge tear of performance, wasn't able to carry SKT to the title, but he went through some impressive mid-lane talent in the gauntlet. But just as a final thing, the thing I'm most optimistic about at this Worlds is thinking about it critically. I feel like this is the one Worlds where basically every style of League of Legends can be played to success. I feel like there isn't one strategy that defines how to win in this meta. You can play around Khan. Maybe Longzhu's the only team that's proved that, but you can have top lane carry. There can be these Enchanter bot lanes with Ardent Censor allowing AD carry to succeed. Mid lane and support are both strong. So it's fun to have a Worlds where you don't come into it right now, at least, with the meta solved.
I mean, there's just a lot of flexibility in every single role. We see some regions, they go late game hyper carries, like Twitch can suddenly get locked in early on.
Can help
exactly, like we see North America prioritize that a lot, and then you switch over to other regions where it's all about, you know, these mobile AD carries that you need to play, and then same thing for support. There's so many different ones being played. I think the diversity is really cool in the current meta, also because the actual counter to what most Western teams are doing is this, like, you know, with the big tanks, is these super strong snowballing early game comps. Most teams in the West can't execute them cleanly, that's why they don't play them. But there will be teams doing Worlds who can do that, and they can punish this style super hard and force teams to adapt.
Yeah, and the biggest hope is that that doesn't become solved, like the bottom lanes being aggressive initiators versus barrier heal bottom lanes to try and withstand it. And I hope we see Jungle Ezreal, because that just messes the jungle meta up even more. It's all over high elo Korean solo queue right now. That's where everyone's playing. Someone's going to try it in scrims.
100%. It's going to be played,
They someone will want to use it on stage if they get allowed by the coach. Not too sure yet.
And it's the idea of the strength of the dive. I mean, we talk about the ability to snowball a game. Ezreal jungle is so good at diving bottom towers just because of his E.
All right, well, thank you very much, guys. That will wrap up our 2017 Worlds Draw Show. On behalf of myself and the Riot broadcast team, I want to say a special thank you to our guests and all our fans who tuned in at home. Worlds kicks off in Wuhan on the 23rd of September, and we cannot wait to see you there.
Worlds, and they are once again your North American champion.
EDG, the most dominant team the region has ever created.
And your new champions of the LCK is Longzhu Gaming.
Back on the world stage.